So I did a whole big Supertansky response on like the last stream, but it was a very kind of short segment because I think she only did 2 minutes of video. But she's released another thing yesterday, which was originally titled something about Long Corbyn and the Kid Starver jibes. So clearly this is something that I have to respond to. It's since been retitled Removing the Tories is an Emergency. And I'm thinking, okay, to replace them with something very, very similar doesn't seem like much of an emergency to me if you're happy to replace it with people who have the identical ideology. But oh well, we will again react and respond in at least some amount of good faith and see what she has to say.
Dystopia warning, obviously. You know how I was telling you the other day about how the Tories, make the policies, make the laws, set the national conversation, which is then regurgitated by their friends in the right-wing media who toe the line because they want to continue to keep sending all their money offshore whilst telling us what to think and dominating the national conversation. Well, that's kind of led me to think about Keir Starmer, the current leader of the opposition. I am amazed at the amount of hatred that's levelled at him. And I want to make it really clear that this isn't me coming from a point of blind defence or emotional investment in Keir Starmer. I have no emotional allegiance to the current or the former leader of the opposition.
I mean, I don't know why you're so confused by the level of vitriol, because not only are his policies bad, both economic, both foreign policy, and also social policy, all of these things he falls massively short on the line on. But outside of that, this man is somebody who is consistently untruthful, consistently disingenuous, someone who has been almost brutal in the way that he has tried to disenfranchise people from politics with regards to the Labour Party. Why is this surprising to you? It would have been very simple to not be in this position, but he's managed it through, quite frankly, a large amount of force of will, probably mostly driven by Morgan McSweeney at this point anyway. But he's just objectively a liar, as JDM points out in chat. People want to see some amount of sincerity from their politicians, and you get zero of that from Keir Starmer. We just got rid of Boris Johnson because of how egregious a liar he was, and Keir Starmer is just as much of a liar. Maybe the lies aren't as big, right? The lies aren't as damaging, but the frequency at which he is mistruthful, how is it any different to Boris Johnson in terms of quantity? I don't see how it's any different.
Because I don't make politicians my personal heroes. That's an idiotic thing to do. I can admire them, like I admired Gordon Brown, Texture Like Sun, because he helped bring my family out of the underclasses and gave us a bit of dignity. There's also the fact that he was mentored by John Smith, another legend. But I don't admire any populist figure. Just look at what Trump said, about walking down Fifth Avenue and shooting someone. I think there are genuinely people out there that would take the same approach for Jeremy Corbyn. And if anything, ironically, he's the person that I had more emotional investment in. I voted for him to be Labour leader, supported him wholeheartedly during 2 general elections. I kept my mouth shut on things that he did that enraged me, like his approach to Brexit. Thought he was
the approach to Brexit of honouring the result of the referendum and trying to find some kind of compromise on a very contentious topic, where if people had listened to him compromising rather than trying to force through a reversal of Brexit, we might not have ended up with the ridiculous hard Brexit that we're in at the moment. Quite frankly, the only person throughout the entirety of this saga whose approach to Brexit has been in any way pragmatic has been Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell.
One of the most smeared politicians that I've ever witnessed. 2017 manifesto was banging. He was also flawed, and also in his long career as an MP, he opposed virtually every single other leader, vocally. Politicians get ousted.
I mean, it's not hard to see why when you look at, a decade of Tony Blair being Prime Minister, where people will say, oh, look, Jeremy Corbyn kept voting against Labour. Yeah, he voted against Labour, and over 90% of those times, the Conservative Party were also voting with Labour, because, yeah, it was a Conservative leadership.
Shit happens. It's politics. Here's Starmer, again, nice enough bloke, needs to stop banging on about the bloody...
What's nice about him? What's nice? What nice things has he done? Getting rid of people he doesn't like from the party with factional issues, making it so that anybody to the left of Augusto Pinochet gets blocked from standing on the slate to be a potential MP in the Commons, lying at every single opportunity, hoodwinking the membership, admitting that they had never intention of listening to the membership on these kind of things anyway. What nice things has he done?
These people are just frontmen. To me, leaders...
And also, I'd like to just quickly say that getting somebody on side is not just agreeing with them and changing all your viewpoints. If you want to get people on side, you need to change what they believe. You need to change their viewpoints. You need to, as you were talking about before, change the narrative, set the narrative, right? We are at a time in which the Conservative Party is universally disliked, at the largest point basically in living memory. We have the perfect opportunity to oppose everything that they believe in and offer a proper alternative and show people that can be done. And we're literally doing the opposite. We're saying, actually, you know what? The Conservatives are right about all of these things. Let's just agree with them because that's the way we'll win votes. I'm like, well, people don't like what they have to offer, which is why some people don't want to vote for them. So why do you want to look like them? It makes no sense.
Of the Labour Party, despite being a member, are perfunctory. The party is always about the sum of its parts. You know, all the MPs that come from working class families that are better.
Which MPs from working class families, Tansky? Which ones? There aren't any left. They've all been kicked out. They've all been blocked, right? And even the one single genuinely working class background MP who's on the front bench, it was only there because she was elected there, Angela Rayner. All the other ones, right? All of the lobbyists, the Caseys, the Spants that have been promoted into positions into the party hierarchy, none of these people from working class backgrounds, right? Now, there's a Twitter account who I disagree with on a lot of issues, but they're absolutely correct about this. Labour Beyond Cities. They talk about this a lot, about how we essentially have a professional managerial class in constant control of the Labour Party and will ensure that their friends from their same sectors get put back in again into the new positions for MPs. Look at Keir Mather, somebody who went to private school, who went to Oxbridge, who was then working for the CBI and was in West Streeting's constituency office. That's not someone from a working class background. That's just somebody who got there because he was mates with the right people. Like, there are a decent number of working class MPs left in the Labour Party, a vanishingly small number, but are they being allowed to get positions in the limelight in the party? No. Are future MPs coming from these backgrounds? Categorically no.
Better place to represent our interests. The only emotional attachment that I have is the fact that I know a Labour government would be better, undoubtedly better.
And also, the Labour Party don't represent your interests. We already have, right? Alistair Campbell in the Portland lobbying firm, the document that he helped draft to be able to give out to future donors to the party, explicitly said that they don't care about what people vote on at conference. They don't care about the interests of the unions. All they care about is ensuring that they allow future lobbyists to shape policy in the interests of them. Do they think they're just doing this for the goodness of their hearts? Or do you really think that what the actual case is they're expecting ROI on that? That's who these people are going to represent. As JDM rightly points out in chat, the Labour Party is now just an extension of Starmer and his mates. The inner circle, the Starmerite Central Committee, with Morgan McSweeney acting as General Secretary. That's all it is. When you look at what happened at the National Policy Forum, where the Starmer Central Committee were essentially celebrating the fact that they blocked what the membership wanted from getting onto the actual slate of policies. They blocked what the unions wanted.
Looking after our interests than the Conservatives. So I'm not going to get involved in shoe picking and talking down the only alternative to this nightmare. It's not happening, because that's not how you get people to vote for you. Now, one of the areas in which...
Yeah, true. The best way of getting people to vote for you is to be incredibly deceitful and lie constantly about what all your positions are and look slimy as hell, right? People don't like Keir Starmer. People literally are only voting Labour because they have nowhere else to go. Because the Conservative Party is so awful, so pathetic. If they've knocked tens of thousands of pounds worth of value off of people's pensions, increased people's mortgage payments by thousands of pounds a year. People are desperate to vote for literally anything else. And they're voting Labour in spite of that, not because of that. Because Keir Starmer is massively disliked by the population. If you don't oppose them now whilst they're crafting policy and looking towards a manifesto, they're going to want to appeal to people who have not just said that they're happy to vote for whatever comes their way. Once you've said, I'm going to vote for Labour no matter what, brilliant, your vote's locked in. We don't have to care about anything that you want anymore. And ironically, your interests suddenly become completely irrelevant to the Labour Party project. They've shown already that the only thing that they specifically care about is about whether people will vote for them, or they have no moral principles, they have no ideological principles, no nothing. The only thing that they care about is getting you to vote for them. And so they will change their positions accordingly to ensure that that happens. And you've come out and said, well, I want all of these things, but I'll vote for you anyway. Great. Don't have to do any of those things anymore now, do I? It's very, very simple.
Starmer's criticised is he's accused of being a Tory. Don't you think if he wanted to be a Tory, it'd be a lot easier for him to just be a Tory? Why?
Ironically, no, it wouldn't be easier for him to be a Tory now, because people don't like the party. People don't like the blue team. They want to vote for the red team. It's interesting, it's much easier to get elected as a Labour Party MP at the next election than as a Conservative, which is why you're seeing so many Conservative members jump ship to the Labour Party and being very public about how they're jumping ship from the Conservative Party to the Labour Party. And not just members, donors as well. Lord Sainsbury, CEO of Autoglass, these ring any bells? If you just want political power, regardless of what kind of form that takes, you'll just join either party at this point, because they both stand for the same things, except the Labour Party now is looking like the ones who are going to form the next government. So that's where people who fancy political power are going to go. Like Keir Starmer joined in 2015, when it looked like, for the vast majority of that period of the coalition, like Labour were going to form the next government. If you were someone who was looking for political power, you'd join the political party at that point, who were the ones who were going to be more likely to gain power. And the David Cameron victory in 2015 was shocking. It was a shocking victory.
Why would he rise up the ranks of the Labour Party to become a Tory? Also, the policy...
Yes, what do you think Tony Blair did? Tony Blair, who was shelling an office with Dave Nellist in the 80s, was like, yeah, I'm going to get to the top of the Labour Party and I'm going to turn them into a neoliberal party. It's literally what he did. Tony Blair is described by Margaret Thatcher as her greatest success. The Conservatives had won the argument.
The policy that they've put forward, we've not seen all of it yet, because obviously they've not released a manifesto because we're not had an election called, is broadly solid. Making non-DOMs pay their taxes so we can fund the NHS, mental health support within a month, reform of the House of Lords. Solid. There's also the fact that the Tories will steal Labour policy.
It's true. We can pay for all of the policies that we want if we get rid of the non-DOM tax status.
Water it down and then try and take credit for the idea. Just look at the...
Right, Tan. A little tip, right? If your policy can be stolen by the Conservative Party, it's a bad policy, right? If your policy can be done by the party that is literally owned by oligarchs, then you've done it wrong. You've got it wrong, mate, right? If your policy is something that the Conservative Party feel happy sticking their name to, you've failed at opposition, right? The whole point about opposition is to oppose the ideology, to be different, to create a different kind of politics. But you're saying, well, the problem is if Labour announce good policy, the Conservatives will take it. No, they won't. The whole point of it being good policy is the fact that it's not conservative, because that's my enemy, Tan. It's conservatism that is my enemy, not the party itself, right? This isn't team sports. This is political policy making. This is about making the world a better place. And if your policy is so right-wing, the Conservative Party will steal it and put their name to it, you don't have up.
A lot of people complain that they don't know what he stands for, but they're not taking into account that the people responsible for informing the people about what he might stand for are basically Tory-led. The BBC, the tabloids, all deep in the Conservatives' pockets. They control the narrative. Now, as a Remainer with Brexit, I'm not enormous.
Let's have a counter narrative, right? Have a counter narrative. Look at 2017. Heaps of negative press, as you've already pointed out in this video, against Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party. They got 40% of the vote, right? That's not much less than what the Labour Party are polling at right now. Look at the last 6 months specifically. An average around about 45%. There's not that much higher than what Corbyn got. The difference is, of course, the Conservative Party have completely tanked. They've completely tanked. But even with all of that negative press, still managed to get 40% of the vote.
Happy about the stance that he's taken, but I get why he's doing it. He's drawing a line to stop the tabloid, speculation. It'd be political suicide if he started saying, yeah, we're just going to rejoin the single market. What do you think they will...
60% of the country, Tan, want to rejoin the European Union. There is a gigantic political consensus, almost a supermajority, for closer relationships with the European Union, that Brexit was a mistake. Because there are loads of things that we can fix regardless of what happens with the European Union. Because again, so many Remain types are so wedded to the idea that all of our economic and social problems are down leaving the European Union. And it's not helped, right? I'm not going to say that it's helped. But all of those problems were all there before. All of the problems that were plaguing the UK's economy were there before we left the European Union. All of the crappy growth, all of the austerity, that was all there from 2008 to 2016. In fact, the seeds were sown with the same kind of deindustrialization under Thatcher, Major and Blair that I was talking about earlier on in the stream. The issue that I think I and most people who agree with me, the most of what we disagree with Keir Starmer on, is that his basic economic principles is terrible. It's awful. It's just bad. It's going to make the country worse.
We all know it's a mess. It's too early to start picking up the pieces. Firstly,
it's one of the really simple things that you could do, right? Because what's happening with our water, for example, is so egregious that not even the papers can defend it. Right? Not even the papers can defend what's happening with our water. There's universal condemnation of the water sector in the papers. Like, one of the easiest things that you could do to actually get votes is just to say that you would nationalise the water industry, and they won't even do that. Not because they're scared of the papers or because they're scared of voters. It's because they're scared of donors. They want donor money. It's the only thing that makes sense. They want to keep the donors on side. They want the city to be happy because it's not going to harm their electoral chances to run on water nationalisation when 70% of the public wants it and there is actual excrement being pumped into our rivers at the moment. After the Thames water fiasco, with our water system being completely asset stripped, it's a freebie. It really is, especially considering that you can fine these companies into administration so that you can buy them for cheap. There's so much you can do which the public would be amenable to, and the papers could not defend. But he won't even do that. In fact, there was it Will Hutton who was trying to have secret meetings with water industry bosses to create policies specifically to stop nationalisation happening. We literally have collusion between these people. So this idea that all of the good policy has gone because the papers don't like it, it's nonsense, because there are plenty of things that you could do that the papers would have no recourse for.
The EU will not take us back. It's like going through a bitter, protracted divorce in which for 7 years you've absolutely slagged off the person you're divorcing and then just going, oh yeah, could I come back? Can I move back in? It's not going to happen. I've always maintained that leaving the EU was noisy, divisive, headed by populist figures with vested interests. Rejoining will be quiet. You'll need someone that's not a populist figure without the vested interests that will quietly...
Okay, you need someone who doesn't have vested interests. Cool, good, I agree, that's great. Have you spent 5 minutes looking at the vested interests of the Labour Party? Were you not there for the Westminster accounts? If you we literally have the news today about Labour Party MPs being given loads of freebies. More on that later on, chat, don't you worry. You literally have a current Labour Party that is beholden to vested interests. And not the good kind, like the unions. I wish it was, but it is not. In fact, Starmer has explicitly gone to war with the unions. So streeting.
Realign us with the EU. Repair the fractured relationship and start the process of fixing this absolute that the Tories have put us in. Now, there's a lot of people out there saying that Keir Starmer's destroyed Jeremy Corbyn's legacy. What legacy? He never saw power. It'd be absolutely foolish to continue the legacy, word for word, of someone that failed to win 2 elections. Although I do think it would be a good idea to echo some of the 2017 manifesto that was put forward under Corbyn, because it was brilliant.
Okay, good. We agree that we should be... That's what we wanted. We want the policies. The policies are all we care about, right? I think that it is terrible that people have been essentially smearing the reputation of a good man in the form of Jeremy Corbyn. I think that is monstrous, right? That's a separate issue to the policy platform, which is what we believe in. People keep saying, oh, the Corbyn cult this, or they just want Corbyn in charge. If they just wanted Corbyn in charge and they didn't care about the policies, why do they all vote for Keir Starmer upon the promise of maintaining the policy? It shows you that it was never about personality cult. It was always about policy, which is why Keir Starmer had the gigantic support that he did for running on that policy and then lying. And then U-turning, because he was a liar. He's disingenuous to his very being, to the core of his being. He's a disingenuous man. And you're saying, oh, you want the 2017 manifesto policies? Brilliant, me too. And yet here you are saying, I'm not prepared to fight for these policies because I will give up the only bargaining chip I have, which is to say that I refuse to criticise the Labour Party for it. We'll vote for them without question. And as I've said before, they've gone, brilliant. This is somebody who I do not have to care about anymore. Will ignore you for policy. It's really simple.
But also, you've got to remember the fact that it's not 2017 anymore. And that ties into my view on the pledges too. It's adapt or die. Britain is a very different place due to the Conservatives decimating the country than it was when he made those pledges in 2019.
The thing is, it actually isn't. It actually isn't. Like, gilt yields may be slightly higher, right? Okay, sure. We might have the higher borrowing costs for new money. Okay, brilliant. Is it high historically? Not really. If you want growth, you're going to have to speculate to accumulate. And that's what Rachel Reeves doesn't want to do. And in fact, if you go back to my segment about Rachel Reeves debunking herself in her own article from 2011, there's lots to fix. I'm not saying everything can be done overnight, right? I'm not saying that everything from 2017 needs to be repeated. I don't think many people are saying that we need to completely run again on the same manifesto. I would just like literally more than nothing, which is what we're getting at the moment. We're literally getting nothing. Like, the damage was done from 2010 to 2015 under the coalition government. In fact, right, since 2019, since the pledges were made, we've ironically had probably the best policy that this Conservative government has done in that time period, because Boris Johnson cared about being liked more than he cared about adhering to neoliberal orthodoxy. And so we got, benefits being uprated with inflation. We got the promise to build more hospitals and expand our NHS capacity. We got levelling up, right? It's not much, but it's better than what we got from 2010 to 2016, innit? There's a Liz Truss period, granted, but, gilt yields and inflation, this was always going to increase as a response to what happened post-pandemic and post-war.
Overpromise and underdeliver to a public that might take a chance and vote Labour. You're not going to have any ability to implement long-termist policy because they're not going to trust you and they're going to turf you out after one term. And due to the Tories tanking the economy, and despite tanking the economy, despite ruining the country, the Tories have managed to successfully con most people into thinking that Labour are the people that are fiscally irresponsible. We don't...
Okay, I agree with this statement. I agree with the statement that it is silly for Labour to be seen as the fiscally responsible party when we've literally had 13 years of fiscal irresponsibility from the Conservative government. We both agree on this, that Conservative ideology has been bad for the economy. So why are you asking me to support a Labour Party that is promising to keep to their same spending plans? Why are you wanting me to vote for a Labour Party that thinks we should not be engaging in fiscal expansion and continuing with the same kind of budgets? That were in some cases saying that they were going to offer less money to public sector workers than the Conservative Party have now offered as a response to the independent pay review bodies. Why are you asking me to vote for a party that is sticking to the identical Conservative ideology that causes mess in the first place? Answer me that. If the Conservative economic policy is so bad, why are you asking me to support a party that wants to mimic it, that wants to copy it? Answers on a postcard, please.
Don't know what we're going to walk into yet. So promising the moon on a stick is just going to erode trust. And people talk again about, writing for the sun. I find it galling. I hate that rag.
Also, stop saying that offering competent social democratic policy is the moon on a stick, because it just isn't. It's just competent governance. Like, investing in public services is competent governance. Taking these natural monopolies away from market hands and into the hands of the people, this is sound economics. It's not the moon on a stick. Please stop describing it as anything other than sound economics, because that's what it is.
But then Diane Abbott, Ben, they did it. Because you've got to try and appeal to people beyond your promise, beyond the people that might normally vote for you. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that Jeremy Corbyn made, was preaching to the converted. You can't just speak to the people that chant your name at festivals. And another thing that I find particularly galling...
Yeah, it's true. It's not like 70% of the country want to see huge amounts of nationalisation, right? It's not like when you ask the country, do they want to see the NHS taken out of private sector contracts, they agree with that statement, right? It's not like that there's a massive supermajority in favour of bringing water companies into public ownership. These are all things that people already agree on. They already agree on us with this stuff. You don't need to convert to these people, because the majority of the population already agree with these specific policy prescriptions, right? I've wanted to have a disagreement. I think most people disagree with Corbyn more about foreign policy than about domestic policy, and they may have promised too much in 2019, and I think there's some truth to that saying we're going to do all this nationalisation and a broadband service and a care service, all that stuff, put voters off. But I think foreign policy and Brexit in 2019 especially was more of a sticking point than domestic policy. I really do. But just saying, okay, we will look at this screwed up economy and we will fundamentally change how it works, right? That is how you fix things. Things are going to remain broken if you stick to the same formulae that we are currently using, which is what Labour are promising to do at the moment.
The thing is, people going around calling Keir Starmer kid starver, right? When has he had the power to do that? The people that
He's the one setting the policy. I'm going to have an aneurysm. Yes, yeah, he's saying, I will get into Parliament and I will do what the Tories are doing. You hate the Tories. I hate the Tories. I hate conservatism. I hate the fact that they adhere to this ideology. I want to see that ideology go. And you're trying to tell me that I should vote for a man who says he's going to keep the same ideology, right? We both think that two-child benefit cap is bad, right? I mentioned this in my response to this in the interview I had with Nicky Campbell, the call-in show on BBC Radio 5 Live. I was like, oh, we don't want to do uncosted policies. Then cost it. Tax the rich, right? The money is there. Politics is about choices. It's about political choices that get made. And he's made the political choice to walk back his idea for a tech platform tax after he had a nice little meeting with Apple and Google, and he said which would pay for double the amount that it would cost to re-implement child benefit for everybody. And he won't do it because he is prioritizing the interests of Google and Apple over this country's children. And that's why we call him Keir Starmer, because that's what he's going to do. That's what he's told us he's going to do, and what he's got all of his little identical parrots in the PLP repeating those same lines as well. He has the power to change the narrative and say, no, I think it is bad that keeping children in poverty is the policy prescription the Conservatives have gone with. You could say that. Tacit acceptance of that is saying that it is, quite frankly, just another way of saying that he thinks it's good. And if we take publicly shaming that man by calling him Sir Keir Starmer into U-turning again on this policy, then so be it, Tansky. So be it. I will mock that man until kingdom come, until he decides that 250,000 children's lives are worth more than his little meetings he has with fucking Apple and Google, okay?
Have starved children for 13 years of the Conservative government. 14 million plus living in poverty. Hundreds of thousands ruined by austerity. Hundreds of thousands of people dead. They wouldn't even top up free school meals for kids that were living with nothing.
Okay. Oh, free school meals, eh? Okay. Would you like me to bring up what Sir Keir Starmer's policy is on free school meals? This one thing there was a cross-party consensus on. There's literally a cross-party working group on free school meals, because not only is it a good policy in terms of the fact that we need to feed our kids, right? We can all get down on feeding children, but as I pointed out on stream beforehand, you get positive return on investment by having a more productive workforce, by making sure that kids maintain nourishment. You get a better economic return on the money that you spend on free school meals. It's a net positive for the economy. And he won't do it. You're preaching to the choir here, Tan. The Tories have been bad for 13 years. Yes, we all agree the Tories have been bad for 13 years. Their ideology sucks. They've done untold damage to our country. Brilliant, we agree. That's one thing we absolutely agree on. And where we disagree on is whether or not we should vote for more of the same coming from the red team. I think that because it's the same, it's bad. I don't think that it's good because suddenly the red team are doing it.
During the pandemic, the problem with this is you shift the blame from where it deserves to be, which is on the Conservatives, the people that have had the power, that have implemented the cruel policy. The opposition are irrelevant. They've not been able to do anything. And
yeah, I understand they have not had a chance to reverse the policy, but they have had a chance to say why the policy is bad, pledge to get rid of the policy, implement different policies that are going to be better, right? They have all of these three opportunities and they've done none of them. None of them. That's their one job as the opposition, is to oppose. And they're not opposing, they're agreeing.
They're not going to be able to do anything if you spread hatred about someone that hasn't even had an opportunity to have a record in power based on hypothesis or based on your reverence for someone that you've...
Oh my God, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to lose my tiny little mind. It's not a hypothesis to criticise somebody for the things that they say and do.
Feel should be the leader instead. The only people it helps is the Conservatives, who sit back and laugh.
The thing is, I don't care who's the leader. I just want them to have good policy. I just want them to do policy that doesn't suck ass, right? I don't want them to be conservatives. I don't want conservative policy. I don't want neoliberals, right? I don't care what they look like. I don't care what their name is. I don't care whether man, woman, cis, trans, black, white. I do not care. I don't care about any of these things. I just want good policy. And we're getting none of it. We're getting none of it from the Labour Party. Nothing.
The left, whilst they bleed us dry because they're moral, corrupt bastards. Ultimately, what this comes down to is the fact that it's not 5 years ago. A lot has changed. All hell has broken loose. And what we need is a capable, competent Prime Minister to help dig us out of the mess. Just look at what happened when the Tories made their mascot their leader. I want politics to be boring again, so I can sleep at night. I don't want an entertainer running the country. This is an emergency, and if you've got, the ability to sit there and talk about your principles or talk about how people should earn your vote, despite the fact that first past the post doesn't care about your feelings, then you must be privileged, frankly.
The thing is, this I hate hearing every single time. I hate hearing this so much. I'm not somebody who wants a certain thing because I just am attached to it emotionally. I want these things because I know they're better for the country, because I know how economic policy works and what good economic policy is. I'm not criticising this because Keir Starmer is on the wrong team. I'm criticising it because it sucks, because it's bad. It'd be bad for the country. And you say, oh, well, you have to earn your vote in first past the post, right? Phil did a video about this as well, where he's talking about whether or not you can vote with your conscience under first past the post. And I think, I've made criticisms of this as well. I actually did a whole video before, right in the very early days of my channel, in terms of the US election. In terms of the US election, where I say, because of the nature of the voting system in America, you absolutely should vote for the Democrats. I would stand by this today. The Republican Party is such a gigantic existential threat to the existence of humanity, as Noam Chomsky would put it. I think that you have to bite the bullet and vote for the Democrats regardless, because they actually do offer something different. But what people always miss with first past the post is they say, oh, you're wasting your vote if you're not voting for the main party. I mean, there's some truth to that, but what they always forget to mention is this idea of voter power, right? What is your vote doing? What's the effective utility of your vote? And if the effective utility of my vote in America, for example, is stopping the Republican Party from destroying the planet, then I think that's worth it. Well, how am I exercising my voter power between electing fusty neoliberal number one and fusty neoliberal number two? That does nothing. It doesn't help me. That's not me using my vote for power. In fact, if we look at an electoral force that's caused the most amount of change over the past 20 years, the one electoral force that's forced to change the most is UKIP. They only won one seat with Douglas Carswell. As many of these seats as the Greens have won, and they caused the biggest political sea change in British political history, recent at least British political history, because their voters recognised their voter power. They got the Conservative Party to change their platform because they knew how to wield their vote to change policy. And that's what we're doing. That's what the left are doing. We're looking at the Labour Party and going, right, you're guaranteed to win the election, but you're hemorrhaging votes. And so you're going to have to renege on policy, renege on, your right-wing turn to be able to see your voter share increase by not having a massive outflux of voters to the Green Party. That's what I'm doing. That's how I'm exercising my voter power. What is the effective utility of me using my vote? And I think that the effective utility of voting for the Democrats to stop the Republican Party from destroying the world is worth it. And I do not think that it is particularly high utility, not just voting in the Labour Party because I want to get the Tories out, but also I don't think it's worth voting for the Labour Party because I think it basically destroys social democracy in this country for decades. Because if the Labour Party won't do social democracy properly, let alone socialism, just social democracy, if they wouldn't even do that, after 1-2 terms they'll get voted out again, and then there'll be another 10 years or so, whatever it might be, of some other party being in charge who obviously won't be socialist or social democratic, giving tacit support to a right-wing Labour Party. You're essentially destroying left-wing politics in this country for 20 years potentially, and I'm not doing that. When I'm looking at identical Labour and Conservative parties, I just don't care. Sorry, don't care. My vote is better used punishing Labour Party electorally, in the same way that UKIP's votes were better used punishing the Conservatives electorally to try and force the referendum. And it worked. They got what they wanted. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider liking and subscribing. It does help out the channel and the algorithm. And if you click the bell notification icon, it will let you know when I go live and when I upload videos. If you'd like to follow me on social media, my handle is @NoJusticeMTG, and that is Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. If you want to support my channel in a more financial manner, you can do so by becoming a member for just 99p, by super chatting, or by supporting me on Patreon, with the link is in the description of this video, and hopefully I'll catch you on the next segment.